Yes, it's number one. It's Top of the Pops.
Welcome to the Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast, episode 110, aka number one in our Top of the Pops top 10 countdown. And the day has finally arrived. I'm sure it's been a white knuckle ride for so many of you. I'm sure many of you are listening on a Sunday morning on the edge, or evening on the edge of your seats, and you just cannot. You've probably been talking about it all week in work, I imagine. Water cooler, standing there. What's the number one going to be? James, the day has arrived. I'm nervous. You said something in the build-up there that made me think I've guessed incorrectly as to what yours might be. So,
I think you have guessed incorrectly, and but I have a feeling I've guessed yours. Well, we'll just leave it at that. We don't want to get too into that. But I think people are extremely excited about this. I mean, there's clearly not a lot else going on in the news to make them nervous or in any way sort of anxious. So getting to number one in our Top of the Pops top 10 countdown.
That's something to worry about, isn't it?
I mean, look, we've gone through a lot of crazy stories on this top 10. I'm looking right now at at both of our lists and some of the things we've talked about in stories, and it has been pretty amazing. Whether it's the entry through the butcher shop of Elvin or the sleeping master of Jericho, or, Suga-san hanging out with the art ensemble of Chicago and being like, yeah, they were really great guys. I don't speak any English though. I mean, all of these stories have just been amazing and awesome. But look, like you said several times during this series, this list of top 10 could change every time we sit down to do it. And so obviously we love all these places, and, we could reassess it as we're even talking. Sometimes we reassess, oh yeah, I should have had this better or whatnot. But yeah, we've reached number one. We've had to come to number one. And so we've done it. And I believe, since I kicked off last week, you are leading off today. And all I'm going to say is that if
hang on. Before you say anything, I'm going to take a gamble here just to see. So what we're going to do is, because obviously I know how much you love a countdown, even though every time it's sort of 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is when we're trying to sync the mics. So we're going to do the same, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to say yours at the exact same time as mine. And if we have the same place, it will be this beautiful synchronicity, and if not, then I will realize I don't actually know you as well as I think I do. So
wow.
We'll do a count.
Okay.
It's going to be 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to say the place.
Right. 3, 2, 1, no zero. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and then we say.
There's no zero. That's not a thing. 3, 2, 1, 0, and then say.
Okay.
It's just not a thing. Zero is the word. Zero is the place, right?
Got it. Oh, we count, and let's count together. Let's count together. Yep.
I think it's the most nervous I've felt since.
We'll edit in some sound effects for this, because this is well deserving. After many hours of podcasting, I mean, this is big news. But
okay, so then okay, right, all right.
You ready?
So. Yes. So I don't know if counting together is going to work, because I think there's a slight delay, right? So,
and we might count faster.
You're going to get a 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1.
I tend to speak faster than you, so yeah, you're right. You go ahead and do it. You count it.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
3, 2, 1.
Adams.
Canthropus erectus.
I knew it.
What did you say?
I said Adams.
Adams?
Adams.
is your number one choice.
Adams is my number one choice. Your number 6. Adams is my number one choice.
Yeah, I don't actually. I just don't get you. I realize I just don't know you as well as I thought. Adams is your number one choice.
It is my number one choice.
Huh.
I told you I would surprise.
And Pithecanthropus is not in your top 10.
Pithecanthropus, you clearly tune out every time we do the intros to this series where I say I've focused in our top 10. In this top 10, I focused on Tokyo Jazz Joints and the experience of doing the project with you and discovering a lot of new places.
And despite that, Pithecanthropus is not in there.
I have not, no, because remember, all of the Tokyo and Yokohama joints, well, particularly the Tokyo joints, are the ones that I had visited in the dozens of times before you and I started the project, right? So, and we've talked about them at length. And so I wanted to focus, because if I had focused in on that part of my life, everything would have been the same old. Well, it would have been Eagle, it would have been Samurai, Kisa Sakaiki, Eiga Khan, Pithecanthropus, it's at Paper Moon. You know what I mean? So
I don't think that's a fair comparison, actually, but anyway, look, you're allowed to choose whatever you like, but I thought how beautiful this will be if we both have the same number one. But
we had it at number. We had it at number 2.
I know, but I feel like number 2 is not as good. But it's a fair point. I think, and I will when I go on to talk about it eventually, I will make my case for why it's not just the same as choosing Eagle, Samurai, Downbeat, whatever. So why don't you go first with your highly controversial choice?
Wow, controversial going there.
As your number one.
Oh dear, that's it. I'm opening this Sapporo Classic now. Then I was going to save it. Okay, all right. As we did in episode 2, we've got to go a little bit into the past. I know you love it when I do this.
No, back to the 70s again.
We're not going back to the 70s, but we
put our flares away.
We're going back, and this is definitely one that you would not have expected, a name you will never expect to have heard on this podcast series. Good old Kevin Costner. Okay. Kevin Costner went through a run in the 90s, starting in the late 80s, really, and up until the early 2000s, where he made a lot of sports films, some which were really great and classic, like Bull Durham, and some which were terrible, like the one I'm about to mention. I think it was his last one. He made a baseball film called For the Love of the Game. It's where it's about he's a pitcher who's basically at the end and he's reminiscing on his life and his relationships. It's an awful, awful film. But the phrase For the Love of the Game is something that's often used in American sports. And I'm sure if it's not the exact same phrase used in UK football, there's something similar. It's basically the idea that when you're so into something, you do it. All of the fame and the riches and the benefits that you get are great, and everybody loves them when you're a famous athlete or famous musician or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you took all of that away, you would still be doing this activity because you just love it so much. You'd still be out there playing baseball or whatever. Okay. Now, I've thought about that a lot in terms of the Jazz Kisa over the years because, Philip, on the pod, we've talked a lot about your standard ex-salaryman who has been a Jazz Kisa customer for many years, collected thousands of records at home. And when they've retired, they have opened their own joint, and very often it's in their house. We saw this in Brooklyn, in Chiba, way out in Chiba. We saw it in Bird in Kamakura, Slow Boat in Tokyo. Very famously, Ray Brown up in Iwate, which is a place that we didn't get to on our list for reasons we won't go into now. But, people who have basically turned the first floor of their house into a Jazz Kisa. Now, and the reason that Adams, for me, is sort of the most remarkable example of that is, and you mentioned it in episode number 6 when we did, when you talked about Adams, the location of Adams is so ridiculous in terms of opening an actual functioning business that it literally makes zero sense. Like if you went to the bank and you said, I need a business loan because I'm going to open a cafe on this street in the first floor of my house, every single bank would say, are you insane? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard because there is literally zero chance of getting a walk by to this place. Adams, okay, is a place that is the ultimate example of For the Love of the Game. Kumagai-san, the owner, and we talked a little bit about it in the episode where you picked it. He opened his place. His menu is the most spare Zen menu possible. He literally has two options. He has coffee and Budweiser. There is no concession towards commercial activity here at all. Okay. He's got the beautiful sign out front that he obviously must have paid quite a bit for. And then once you go inside, he's got that sound system and those records and all of his own jazz magazines lined up there. And even the furniture. I mean, those sofas were very, very nice. It wasn't cheap stuff that he had thrown together, right? So when we went to Adams, and I mentioned this in last week's episode, why Coltrane came in at number 2, even though I was raving about how spiritual it was of a place for me. But if you had told me before, when we started our journey, or even when I started going into jazz keys around Japan, if you told me, oh, James, there's this place called Coltrane that's like, it's like a 3-story house and it's got his mural outside and all of the dishware has Coltrane's face and name on it. And the guy's got 5,000 records. He's a Coltrane completist. If you told me all that, I would have been like, okay, there is 0.0% chance I will not like this place. It would be, you know what I mean? It's obviously made for someone like me. But Adams was the discovery. For me, it was the discovery of Tokyo Jazz Joints. Looking through all of the places we'd been to, it was, as you mentioned when we recorded, we almost didn't go there. I mean, we were really close to dropping it. It was like, oh, can we have time? Where is this? Some suburb? I don't know. What do you know about it? I don't know anything. I just saw the website. There's nothing on there. I have no idea. The shock of walking in there and discovering this absolutely remarkable environment where Kumagai-san is just there. Remember the regulars that you mentioned were there when we walked in? And he's got this insane sound system, and he's devoting it to George Adams. No Dolphy, no Bird, no Miles, right? George Adams, a great player, not at the fame level of those other guys, okay? But this is his guy. He's going to open this joint, and he doesn't care about having an extensive menu. He clearly doesn't care about people walking by, coming in. Neighbors come by, they like jazz, they don't. That's fine. I'm going to be here. I'm going to make coffee. I'm going to play records on this system. And I'm going to be here every day. And that is, to me, the ultimate love of the game guy of all the jazz cases that we discovered, particularly in the regions. So for me, the impact of that was so beautiful because I kind of related it. And, again, I don't want to go off on too much personal shit, but for me, it's sort of like I've been going around and exploring jazz keys for 20 plus years now. I started the website when my son was born. He's now about to graduate from high school. It's been a long time. Right? I've never done any of this for money. I've never done any of this for any kind of like acclaim or whatever. I mean, I love it if I get somebody pays me to take them around or people say complimentary things on social media. I do love that. I'm a human being, right? But I would be doing all of this if none of that existed. And, even if sadly, if you and I had never met or if you hadn't come up with the idea of the project, I probably still would have been doing this, because I love it just so much. I love it more than anything in my spare time. And I felt with this guy at his joint, at that location and that space, this was the purest example of somebody who's just like, this is what I love. This is what I do. It's not my hobby. It's my passion. It's my life. And that's why, to me, it had to be at number 1. In fact, it wasn't even, it was really an only debate between Adams and Coltrane. So maybe controversial, but I think I've explained it, my reasons why, and I think you get it.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, I think you've sold me, but I think it's an interesting choice, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great choice. And actually, hearing you talk about it, I mean, I think it's an interesting. I can't remember exactly. I've got very sort of vague notes about it, but interestingly, when we went to visit it back in 2023, or no, sorry, it was 2024.
No, it was 4.
Early 2024. Because I went twice in 2024. I was there in February and then...
Yeah, that's right. There was 2 trips. Yeah.
And I've got just written in my top 10. So even back then, I was thinking the same. And obviously, as you said, I had it in at number 6. And I know he had closed it. I think it was open 2004, 2008, and then it closed again, and then it reopened, and he sort of made some kind of slightly mysterious comment about, family business issues or something. But I mean, yeah, it's a brilliant choice. And I think, we've talked a lot about Adams. There's probably no need to talk more about it. And, I talked about it in at number 6 as well. But I think for me, what's more interesting there just is what you're saying. And I do think this is really, if you'll indulge me, I think it's really important because for 10 years, since Tokyo Jazz Joints began, and if you read the first, if you read the essay in the book, I talk about how it's still, I remember at the time sort of coming up with that name, and I had a question mark in my album, and it still has that question mark because I wasn't sure, and it just became the name, and then it continued to be the name, and obviously, now there's no sense of, there wouldn't be any sense of changing it at all. But I mean, I think you've been doing this for so many years, and I think what's happened, obviously, partly as a result of, Tokyo Jazz Joints project, obviously Kusanose's work with the Jazz Kisa, or Gateway to Jazz Kisa project, and this podcast, and then other things that I've talked about before, like the revival of vinyl and the interest in Japanese jazz and all these kind of things. But I think, I've noticed this change as there's been this, it's almost become this global phenomenon, of Jazz Kisa and Japanese listening bars. And as you would expect with anything like that, when something comes over ground, there's all sorts of different understandings of it, and some are misunderstandings, and some people take what they want from it, and some people try to copy it and it doesn't work, and some people do something that approaches, I think, more authentic representation of the culture. But I think, and you see it on Instagram now, and we've always said as well, nobody owns this culture, no one owns it, and so people can do what they want. And I think what's interesting for me is, you're going through Instagram and you see, there's this account and that account, and suddenly there's people, going, I love this place, and it's become a thing to introduce to people. But I think it bears stating, for me, that you have been doing this for 30 years. When I came to Japan, I was into hip hop. I have mentioned briefly, and we'll talk about it more at another time, about discovering that I'd been to Chigusa back in the late 90s when I first went to Japan.
Yes, that's right. Because you were in Yokohama. I think we talked about that on the when you guested on OK Jazz. Right,
but I didn't have the awareness of that then. But you came to Japan with this interest, this love of jazz, and so you've been doing this. And I think, it is testament to you, because, like you say, you really are, and always have done it for the love of it. And I think your lack of ego about that is something that's always impressed me, because you just do it for the love. And I think we've seen increasingly people, these sort of people, experts, and people talking about Jazz Kisa, and suddenly everyone's an expert and everyone's going to this place and that place, and it's become fashionable, it's become a trend. And I'm completely and utterly conscious and aware of the fact that Tokyo Jazz Joints has been a part of that, increasing that global awareness. And as with anything, the more popular it becomes, in some ways the less cool it becomes. And there will be this rise of interest, and inevitably, like anything else, there will be then that decline in interest, and things, something else will take over. But I think, similar to what you're saying about Adams and so many of these owners, you, regardless of those, of what's happening in the sea around you, you'll still be, when those ships have gone, you'll still be sailing through those waters and still doing that same thing that you've been doing for so many years. And I think it bears stating, I think, for me, because, you had your website, you were introducing people to these places, you had information about how to go visit them, the kind of vibe that you could expect, and you're still doing that now, and, you will continue to do that. And, for some people, there is that genuine love and that passion. And then, inevitably, like with anything, particularly in the world we live in with social media, there's an element of fashion, and it's trendy, it's a business or whatever. But the pure, I think, essence of Jazz Kisa, and it might be overstating it, but yes, they're businesses, but like someone like Adams, like you say, it's not just about that, really. It's about how do you live out your days? How do you give credit and respect and reverence to the things that you love? How do you get your own satisfaction? And if you can make enough money to survive and selling a few coffees to the neighborhood or whatever else it be, so be it. But that, at least to us anyway, just as people dropping in, doesn't seem to be the overriding motivation, right? It's about something deeper. It's about something more important. And I think that's something that, for me, that you share with those owners, albeit that you're not running a place, you're just going to visit them, but it is that same passion. So,
well, I'm
maximum
really,
respect.
I'm really, yeah, I'm really touched, Philip. Thank you. That's just great because thank you. That's really great. It's yeah. I mean, I think that there is something really special when you meet people, and this extends obviously not just in the Jazz Kisa world, which happens to be our thing, but whenever you meet anyone who has such a passion for something, and it extends so far beyond whatever sort of like fashion or popularity or feedback or positive reinforcement they get. It's like they just do it because they love it. I love talking with people who just are really into stuff. We joked, I think we joked, was it last episode about golf or something? Maybe that was offline, but anyway, because I'm not a golfer and I don't watch golf and I'm not interested in golf. But I once knew a Japanese salaryman who, when he talked about golf, I mean, it was the way you and I talk about Coltrane, okay? Like, he would talk about the smell of the grass and the way the sky looked and the way he felt when he would, like, putt. And I was just like, God damn, man, I've never met anybody who loves golf as much as you. I'm almost ready to get out there with you, His passion for it was so invigorating. I really love that. And that's what I love so much about these joints, and like we said, like with our man at Adams, with Kumagai-san, you mentioned it when we talked in episode 6, he sat us down and he was like, oh, okay, like, please don't take a video of this because this is like one of my like treasures. And we're like, a treasure. His treasure is a VHS copy, right? Of the Fuji Jazz Festival. That's his treasure, right? If you say that to 99.9% of the population of the planet, they're going to be like, what the hell's wrong with you? But we get it because we feel the same. We love the music. And I love the fact that for him, this VHS copy is one of his most important things, So yeah, I mean, to me, it was just that special. And I'm really, I'm really just, thanks a lot for saying that. That just feels great, man.
No, I mean every word. Well, look, I'm going to go on to my number one in the kind of, again, perhaps the spirit of a place being not necessarily designed as a money-making machine. And of course, as
goodness
you
no,
already know, as listeners know, it's Pithecanthropus erectus. And I think for me, I mean, obviously you're coming from a different perspective because for those of you who aren't familiar with the project origins, when I first approached you about this idea, we had tried to arrange, I think, a couple of times to go, and it didn't quite work out. And the way that things ended up was that we arranged to meet on the 27th of March, 2015. And the place that you had chosen, because obviously you knew it and thought it would be a good place to go, was Pithecanthropus erectus. And I think for me, this had to be number one. And, little did I know that in 2014 that this project would just be so much of my life for the next, and continuing. I mean, it's now 12 years since 2014. And I think even before the book came out in 2023, but particularly since that, I think it's just constantly being bound up with Pithecanthropus erectus. And there's a few reasons. I think for me, it's just a very symbolic place. It's symbolic in the sense that it's the first place that we went to. And again, if you've read the essay at the start of Tokyo Jazz Joint's book, you'll kind of hear this recounting of what happened, which, as we've talked about many times, was that had and you talked earlier in the previous episode about, Engaru, about this idea of things being fated. And I mean, had that shutter stayed down, who knows? Maybe this would have been a bust. Maybe other stuff would have got in the way. You had younger kids and I was busy and traveling and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it may never have happened, right? So for me, that's, it's symbolic in that sense. And also, I wasn't till I got in there and started to photograph that I kind of got a clear sense of, okay, this is what I was thinking about doing and this is how it might look. And, so it's symbolic in that sense. It's also symbolic, I think, in the sense that, even back then, before we were conscious of so many of these places closing, and over the course of the last 10 years, a lot of places have disappeared and continue to do so. Pithecanthropus was kind of ahead of the game in the sense that it was one of those places that, Ichizaki-san had been it had been taken over. He'd taken over as a customer, and so he had kind of been offered to the opportunity to take it over from the original owner, who had fallen into ill health, and so it already, funnily enough, even though the motivation for the project was to kind of photograph these places before they disappeared, had kind of secured the future of Pithecanthropus erectus for. It's at least for the foreseeable future, because he's a much younger guy, and so there's those things. And then obviously when the book came out, when I was working with Kara on the whole kind of editing process, and the absolute nightmare of like having to try and choose a cover image for the slipcase, which you'll be familiar with if you've either got the book or you look anywhere online, is of course this photograph of Ishizaki-san. And, it's maybe not necessarily the natural choice, but I kind of loved it because he's in it, but he's not.
It's definitely a natural choice. No, it's definitely the natural choice. It's absolutely,
and
it is.
And again, in that way, Pithecanthropus is symbolic as well, because it has so many elements of, I think, both of us that, despite other new places and these cleaner places and so on and so forth, it has those elements that I think we both, when we go into somewhere, we just revel in, which is the kind of the dust, the grime, the cigarette smoke, the old furniture, the kind of pokiness, this enormous record collection, but, on slightly wonky shelves. It has that sort of open light bulb, the little kind of crappy toaster oven, the microwave, it just has all those elements of somewhere that has kind of weathered time, has weathered changing tastes, all those sort of things. And I think for me, obviously now, like it's just the image of the cover of the book. It's become kind of iconic, I think, of the Tokyo Jazz Joints project in itself. And, it's also the place that I've been the most, because it's become a bit of a tradition for us that when I'm back in Japan, we kind of round off the trip with a visit there to say hello to him. And on one occasion, I had to sort of awkwardly kind of ask him, would it be okay to use that photo for the cover? On another occasion, it's something else. And we recorded, I think, a couple of times. We recorded an episode of the podcast there. So for me, it's just become, I think, that spiritual. I think for both of us, it's become that spiritual home. And I thought, you're coming at it obviously from that angle where it's somewhere that you were already familiar with, and I totally take your point about the Tokyo joints and all the kind of the usual big hitters like Samurai, Doug, etc., etc. But I think for me, it's just become like such an integral part of my life through the Tokyo Jazz Joints project for all these years, and yet it all started with that one evening where we didn't really know each other particularly well. It was like, is this going to work? Like, are we going to get on? Are we like, and this is no reflection on you because you're probably thinking the same, but I'm thinking, is it like, am I going to just is this going to work? Like me hanging out with this guy? Like, are we going to get on?
You were thinking like, Jesus, does this guy have to walk so goddamn fast?
Well, so I was like, I'm going to have to get in shape to keep up with this guy. So I think, for all those reasons, I thought like, there's no way that I couldn't have it at number one. And so yeah, I mean, it's just a very special place, and I mean, incredibly, it's still that place that it's just a little pokey room up those stairs. Even the last time we went, it's like, is it open? We're not sure. Like,
it's a place. It's a place that is absolutely remarkable that it still exists. It just and I think and look, everything you said about it, obviously I'm completely 100% in agreement. Especially, we'll go back for a second. I mean, so, like you mentioned, I mean, we knew each other as, nodding acquaintances, but we were not really pals. We just happened to meet at a lot of the same events because we knew similar people. We liked the same music. So we didn't know how we would get on, like, is this somebody that you can go around hanging out with forever? But I remember thinking, because I was trying to figure out what was a place to take you that you hadn't been. You know what I mean? Like, maybe like as a first thing, because the Canthropus erectus was not, I had been there many times, but it wasn't when I lived in Tokyo, it wasn't one that I went to that often, because Kamata is quite southeast Tokyo on your way to Kawasaki and Yokohama, right? So it's not that easy to get to, So places like Samurai or Eagle or Paper Moon or whatever. But I remember thinking that of all of those places, Pithecanthropus, the minute you walk in, before you even walk in the joint, the minute you walk up the stairs, just the visual impact of it is so nuts. And I was thinking, like, okay, if this guy doesn't have a really intense reaction to this joint, maybe we're not gonna, you know what I mean? Maybe our view is not really aligned on like what he's looking for. Maybe I don't really know what he's looking for. You know what I mean?
It was a test.
Yeah, like maybe he's not going to be like that. He might just, if he just comes out like, oh yeah, that was pretty cool. Okay, I took a couple pics. I might be like, oh, I don't know, man. Is he really that enthusiastic about it? Because when I walk into Pithecanthropus, even now when I walk in, I'm still in shock that this is an actually functioning jazz bar in Tokyo, one of the world's most visited cities now. You know what I mean? But Kamata is not. Kamata is not a place that too many tourists are getting to. So, the fact that you loved it, and I remember because I had never even noticed, and that's your photographer's eye, the famous monk quote in the bathroom. Probably because being me, I'm always just running to the bathroom urgently for other reasons. So I never actually noticed the script that was up there. But like, the fact that like you noticed that, and then, just everything about it, that first visit went really, really well. And so it was like, oh, okay, let's keep going and let's try this. And then, and even outside of the project, the joint itself, again, the purity of it, the fact that Ishizaki-san is the second owner, but literally changed nothing. And I mean nothing. I don't even think he changed the damn glasses that he uses. Okay. Like, I don't even think he's not even changed like anything in the bathroom. I mean, he got the place as is. This is as pure of a Japanese jazz joint as you could possibly experience in the entire country. And the beauty of it, it goes far beyond just like the dinginess or the records or anything. The beauty is that purity. It's like, this is what we do. You come in, I've got 5 or 6 seats that you can sit down by the wall. I've got 4 or 5 seats at the counter. There's no ventilation. I'm going to be chain smoking. There's whiskey and there's beer. Maybe there's a little bit of sake. I think we had once. It's not an extensive menu. There's no real snacks. And if there are snacks, you wouldn't want to eat them anyway. It's some dry crackers, maybe some popcorn sometimes, right? You're here to experience the music. This is what an old school Japanese jazz bar is. And it's just remarkable that Ishizaki-san is the second owner and had the common sense, had the appreciation, I should say, not just the common sense, had the appreciation to keep it as it is so that we could go there now. Because remember, Philip, I only met the original owner once. Okay, so to me, Pithecanthropus is Ishizaki-san. It's not.
Yeah.
No, it's, you know what I mean. Like, so I never even got there in the heyday of it. So to know that it's a second generation, and he's younger than we are. I mean, he could keep running that for another 20 years and hopefully turn it over to someone else and keep it exactly the same. It is an absolute gem. The photo on the cover of the book is absolutely perfect. Philip, you have no idea. People have told me, they've texted me or old friends from college or whatever, not jazz people. Okay. Just people I know in my life that are not fellow jazz heads. And they were just like, what the hell is this place on the cover of the book you guys did, right? You know, they just can't, especially people who've never been in Japan, you know, people back in the States or whatever. They can't process it, you know, because it's like, it's something so alien and so unique to this world. And so they've looked at it and I was like, well, this is a bar, it's a tiny jazz bar, you know, and they were like, but is it somebody's house? I'm like, no, it's not someone's house. It's actually a functioning business. And so you get those reactions from people overseas. And then you also get from people who even are into jazz, but have never really experienced the deep jazz joints like we have. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know anything about this, but that place on the cover, please take me when I come to Japan. I'm like, you got it. I'll take you. I know the guy. It's not a problem. You know, so yeah, it's a beautiful choice. I obviously, you know, like we laid out, like my parameters for our project here of the top 10 were a little different. If it was including Tokyo, it would have been right at the top because it is an all timer and it is basically, it's our home base, like you said. You know, no need to go into it further. It's our home base. It's where we always end up. I think there was at least 2 times where you may have texted my significant other on the way home that I might have been overserved because we were enjoying it so much. I think there was at least 2 times of that. You know?
Do you remember that once going like, did he get home okay? Yeah, I forgot.
Well, you know why? You know why? It's because we switched from beer. For some reason, it might have been in winter, like we were drinking sake. And I mean, sake just doesn't agree with me. And so, yeah, that was a rough trip home. But like, it's always going to be our home base. And we always know that. And I love Ishizaki-san so much. But man, is this guy? He's if the Count guy in Sendai is the Buddha of jazz kissa, this guy's the Tokyo Bodhisattva because he is just like. We came to him with Philip. Do you remember? We came to him with a hardcover photo book from a very famous German publisher. And we're like, you are on the cover. And he looked at it and he was like, oh, yeah, that's good. And it wasn't that he was being rude. It wasn't that he wasn't interested. It's just his manner is so dry. He's so smooth. He's so dry. He doesn't go up or down. He's just like, oh, this is great. And then, of course, his wife was totally different, who was raving and laughing and practically wanted to give us hugs and stuff. She was so happy about it, you know. But he is Mr. Cool. And I know that he'll be that way when we visit, when you're back here very shortly. So, yeah,
stoic
a great choice.
Yeah, he is a stoic man. He gives very little away, but you get that sense that he just has this twinkle in his eye. The last time we were there, I think you hear it in the podcast, the one that we recorded live where he, I think he spots us talking about his Snoopy shirt and he kind of, his ears prick up and then we were like, oh, nice t-shirts or whatever, you know, and so he does have that twinkle, but it wasn't just a Snoopy T-shirt. It was the Beatles. It was the Beatles as the Charlie Brown characters. Yes, it was a cool T-shirt. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So anyway, there we are. That is the Tokyo Jazz Joints top 10 countdown from number 10 to number 1. We hope that you have enjoyed it. We have certainly enjoyed thinking them up and recording these episodes, and I think there was a couple of times I was slightly worried where I thought, oh, this is, you know, if we keep guessing, if we keep coming up with each other's options, it's going to be, which is inevitable. I think I thought this is going to be a bit.
Well, you know, actually, look, it's interesting, Philip, because like we said, we, you know, as you were talking about earlier when we were talking about Adams, like, you know, we've had slightly different timelines or experiences, but also different perspectives or whatever. But we aligned on 3 joints, you know, that are in our lists: Adams, Coltrane, Coltrane, and Elvin, which I would have guessed would have been in there. And I almost had Naima from Beautiful Oita Kyushu, Naima, which was your number 9 choice. I almost had that in too, but it didn't make the final top 10 cut. So we were almost aligned on like 40% of the choices. You definitely surprised me with a couple as well. I was quite surprised that you picked Basie, but I understood your reasons once we recorded that. Go back and listen to number 5 in the countdown. And you know what? I've got a confession to make. I didn't say it on episode 4, but I'm going to say it now since we're at the conclusion. I completely forgot about Mokuba and Kochi. And when you started talking about it, I was like, oh, man. Are you kidding me? How could it's not? I'm looking at my long list right now on my laptop, and it's not there. And I'm just like, how did I forget that? Because that was the best place in Shikoku. It was the best place I visited in all of Shikoku, and I just forgot it because.
Well, it's hard,
look,
right? I mean, because
we've been to a lot of places, you know.
Yeah, I mean, sort of on an aggregate basis, we're probably picking from around like 250, 300. I mean, that's to get that down to 10. I mean, I know even from just trying to get, photographs down from like 500, and let's say you're aiming for 150, and you get to 350, and you're like, that's it, done. Like there's no way I can get any more. And sure enough, you go back, and then you're like, okay, well that can come out, and then you're down to 200, and you still like, well, that's definitely it now. And I think choosing from that number of places, like inevitably there's going to be not to go back to right to the start again. You disputed the intellectual exercise claim, but I mean it is definitely one of those things where you're kind of like, it's interesting to think back in those places, but inevitably there's other ones that, like you'll sit down. I mean, I know after recording your podcast, I was like, oh, I can't believe I forgot this song. I can't believe I forgot this album.
Right.
It's just the nature of it, right? There's nothing you can do about that. But I mean, I think there's nowhere, certainly apart from my previous comments about Pithecanthropus, that I would say in your top 10, like how could you not include? And as I said in one of the episodes too, there are all these other places that do deserve honorable mentions, but I think for me, particularly from 2018 onwards, where I'm going back and visiting, it's those ones that really stick out in your mind in terms of like
for sure.
Well,
that's the thing, is because and we were talking in episode 5 where we talked about Basie, and then my choice was Elvin up in Iwate, and that insane day that we had where we went to Basie and we talked about it, coming out of there around 12:30, maybe 1 p.m. pretty tired and drunk already. I climbed a mountain in the morning and then started pounding the beers with Swifty-san, right? But then the insane next step to go to Ray Brown, and it was sort of like, I was actually looking at my list before we started recording tonight, and I was thinking like, okay, why did I not include Ray Brown? The reason is because we weren't there long enough. Like because we weren't there long enough, because I was really drunk when we arrived. My notes are not very clear. I do remember a couple of the crazy stories about him asking us about, okay, can you get this email to Quincy Jones? Yeah, sure, he's a friend of mine. Like there was some crazy stuff with Ray Brown, right? But it wasn't like it. I just didn't have enough, and I felt like I need to go back there again. That's a place to go back for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, really talk to the owner, really understand him about his experience, and like, you were at Ray Brown's wedding, all of that stuff, because I felt it was a little light, and again, like you said, together we've been to more than 250 joints around the whole country. It's crazy. So like, how do you come down to 10? But yeah, look, happy with the list. I think we have some great choices. We've got some controversial choices. We've had some great stories. I think, if I'm not wrong, by the time people hear this episode, no, that is total nonsense. You can edit that out. You will not be here then. No, it'll be a few weeks after. Scratch that. Edit that part out.
I mean, I'm not sure it makes any difference to them anyway, but it's good to end on a completely nonsense, incorrect point after this incredible countdown.
Keeps with the vibe, and not everything can be about my spiritual awakening with John Coltrane's transition, or after the rain. It's funny, Philip. So we were talking offline on Friday night here. I was planning to go to Dolphy in Yokohama, but I didn't go because we had a massive rainstorm, like crazy rainstorm. And then, so of course I decided to put on, it was one of those rare nights for me when literally nobody's in the house. My kids are out, my wife's out. It's just me and the dog, me and Sam. So I put on my jazz and I put on some John Coltrane, and I was listening to After the Rain, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I've heard this 200, 300, 400 times in my life, and it never gets less beautiful and less transcendent. And it was like, yeah, this is what it's all about, man. This is why we're jazz fans, why we're music fans, and this is why we love Coltrane. And it just filled me with so much happiness. And I wanted to share that with you and with all our listeners, because I know you're a Coltrane man even more than I am. So you know the feeling.
Amen. Well, look, we will be back for a couple of maybe special episodes, and then with a bit of luck, as you mentioned, I'm heading out to Japan. So hopefully in a couple of months' time, or slightly longer, perhaps we'll have some more new episodes. In the meantime, please go back into the back catalogue. You can dig out some of those episodes if you're interested to find out more about when we first went to Adams or Coltrane, whatever it might be. And thank you, all of you, for your support, your ongoing encouragement, and it's always amazing to me to look at the insights on SoundCloud and how the numbers just continue to tick up. And even after an episode goes out on a Sunday morning, within a few minutes, there's sort of multiple people listening to it, and it's very it's humbling, and it's really a wonderful thing for us, and we never take it for granted. So thank you, all of you, for your support. And yeah, James, we will talk again very soon, and then not too long away, we'll actually be reunited in Pithecanthropus erectus and other places. And take it easy.
Yep, we'll be laying off the sake that night, but yes, I can't wait, buddy. Talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.